Hello and welcome to our channel, MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Schickley. Welcome to Solar Arts Heal, dedicated to the healing power of the arts through terrific performance by survivors and caregivers facing physical and mental challenges, including environmental and social justice challenges. Tonight, we present Native American Leland Faulkner as we honor Native American and Indigenous peoples, honoring their wisdom, knowledge, and relationship with the natural world, and shedding light on current challenges. Mr. Faulkner will share excerpts from his newest show, Dreamcatcher, a short collection of works dealing with Native America and the Native American perspective. These visions are brought to life using the tools of theater, mime, spoken word, and magic in original performance designed to shine light on critical issues facing a vulnerable community. Featured tonight will be 4 segments, and we'll have a talk back between each of them. Your comments and questions are welcomed. So now, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Leland Faulkner with his introduction, the first of 4 excerpts from his stage show, Dreamcatcher.
Oh, Anin, bonjour. Just laying out here, trying to catch some dreams. I come out here to look at the Spirit Road. Someday we'll all travel it. It's full of dreams. Dreams, well, everything begins first as a dream. Think of the biggest building that you've ever seen, or the most amazing rocket into space that you've ever seen. It all began as a dream. Dreams have the power to change the world, to change minds, to change hearts, and even change bodies. Dreams give us a new perspective on the world. A dream can let you see something from this side or that side, even from underneath or above, or maybe most importantly, even from the other side. Dreams and perspective. That's what tonight is all about, perspective. Yeah, perspective. You see, perspective is everything. Perspective. When I was a little boy, I had this very little boat made out of birch bark. And I would set my dreams afloat. And those dreams I had as a boy, as I became a man, they influenced me and created the perspective I have now. This pandemic we've all lived through, well, that has changed my perspective as well. And I've seen so many good dreams come to life through it. I've seen people rise rather than fall prey. And that's powerful. I'd like to do a piece for you that is purely movement. It's a pantomime piece, silent, without words. I first created this piece years ago in a workshop with the incredible teacher, Barry Rolfe, who I taught with at Celebration Barn. She was an amazing woman, and she taught me a lot. Men owe a great debt to the women in this world, but often men take advantage of their position of power. But men are just like women. We are human. We have our weaknesses. And I'd like to dedicate this pantomime to all the incarcerated Native American people, men or women. This is Escape, a pantomime. Miigwech. Miigwech. That's the Anishinaabe word. Not so much for thank you, but that is enough. So, a pantomime. At this time, maybe we should just have a little discussion about.
That sounds great, Leland. Thank you so much for that performance. It's very, very moving and very disturbing. I know that Native Americans are incarcerated at a rate that is, according to the Bureau of Justice statistics, 38% higher than the national average. They're incarcerated at a rate that is 38% higher than the national average. Native American men are admitted to prison at 4 times the rate of white men.
Yep. I know the statistics are incredible, just incredible. I mean, there's a lot of media attention that's given to mass incarceration and police violence in African American communities, and that's incredibly important. But very little attention's been paid to mass incarceration and police violence among Native people. Native Americans are actually more likely to be shot during a confrontation with the police than even the Black community. And it's not something that's ever discussed or even really very well known. It's sort of like Native Americans are an invisible part of the population. It's just the disparity is huge. It's disproportionate. In Minnesota, I think Native Americans are like 1% of the state's population, but they're 7.6% of the state's prisoners.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's like
in Native Americans, like in Alaska, it's like 15% of the population are Native, but in the prison population, it's double that. It's 30%. Mm-hmm. So it's Native American men are 4 times more likely to go to prison. Isn't that
and Native American women also are admitted 6 times the rate of white women.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And part of the disparity comes from the fact that because of tribal sovereignty, we are like a nation, and our tribal governments are actually controlled by the federal government. And so when the federal government prosecutes a Native American, the penalties are much stricter and harsher when it comes to the federal government than with state government. And sometimes Native Americans, they get a double punch. They get hit not only by the federal justice system, but then also by the tribal courts and the tribal justice system. So they get a double whammy. So that accounts for some of the disparity. And of course, there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse on reservations. I've done a lot of teaching of theater, not just to Native American kids, although I did a lot of that in Seattle several years ago. Tribal youth would come into the big city, and there would not be nothing there for them. They'd end up becoming street people. Mm-hmm. And there were no opportunities, and they would always get into the fights at night, which was the big bad one. And of course, drug and alcohol. So it's not a pretty scenario. It's not the trope of the wise Indian coming in and being like that. It's a problem with youth. It's a problem with the way the culture has been decimated over the years, and the way Native Americans have been allocated away from their traditional lands and their religion. in their families even. It goes back to a lot of cultural sensibility that's being lost. It's being watered down, appropriated, and it has a tremendously dark effect, I think, on Native American culture in general.
Absolutely. I think of our water keepers, you know, at the time of the Keystone Pipeline, it was some 800 Native Americans were arrested. And you think on any average demonstration for anything, you don't have 800 arrests. Right. And it was all ages. And then we don't hear about what's happened to them.
Right. And if you apply the same rule, say, to insurrectionists, it seems to have a completely different tip of the scale. So I don't know what the answers are, but I do know that I have some friends who are social workers, for example, in Seattle, who try to give Native American youth a chance to reacquaint themselves with their culture and their arts. And for me, I mean, Solo Arts Heal is a fantastic program. First of all, for me, it was incredibly healing to be part of this program because it called on me to do something new and original and a little bit risky. And
we're so grateful to have you back. You were with us last Thanksgiving, and we want to honor Native Americans all year round. And this is a time that we do think of, and I really appreciate you being with us again.
Thank you. And what I was going to finish by saying is that it's kept me sane, being creative. And creativity is a Native American tradition. We aren't just one thing, one story. We are living, we are doctors, lawyers, politicians. We are many things, not just the commonly held tropes. There are all kinds of opportunities if we can get out of a cycle of darkness and a cycle of pain and suffering and even murder. So enough said about that. If people want to find out more about the way Native Americans are treated by the justice system, you only have to do a simple search online, and all kinds of information will pop up. And it's pretty disturbing. It's quite disturbing.
And are there things, is there anything people can do?
Well, you can lobby. You can lobby the justice system to try and have them take into account this disparity and to do something about it. I know Congresswoman Deb Haaland is very active on some of these subjects, especially the subject I'm going to address next.
And I know the Urban Indian Health Institute, there's a lot dealing with that. And I know that is also connected in some conversation we'll have for this next piece.
And there are some social workers too that focus strictly on Native American youth, and my hat's off to them.
Absolutely.
All right, so shall we move to the next subject?
The next subject we're going to see is ghost dance, and we're going to learn about the disappeared. This is another very disturbing subject.
All right, I'm going to stop my screen and just do a quick adjustment and bring up a new screen for my background to illustrate this piece.
Okay, thank you, Leland.
I I am dreaming. I am dreaming. They're standing in my dreams. They are the ghost women. The women, they're standing there without a voice, without breath. They beckon me to speak through the stillness, to sound their story, and I know them not, yet they come. They're the missing, the murdered, the sad. They're the ghost women, and their silence speaks of children that will never be. They're ghosts, these mothers, these daughters, the lost, the crying, the dead, the soft, tender dreams ripped from flesh. No warrior, no tribe, no hero to save them, facing shadow-hearted men, men with the power of lust and death. The women call out from the dark. They call for a voice. They call out in silence, echoing through the heart canyon. They call out for justice. They call out to be heard. They call out to be heard. They call out to be heard. They will not be unknown. The women call without a voice, without a voice, without a voice. And now the children come. Talking eyes. They say, my brother misses me. They say, my mother searches for me. They say, my father is angry. They say, my sister cries for me. They say, my relations are crying, crying, crying over bones and ash, crying over nothing, 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 crying in the desert, crying over emptiness, crying over echoes, crying over empty beds, crying over endless pain, crying out for what will never be. They cry out over men, over lies and evil. Their tears are blood on the rocks. You dark men, you drunken men, you false men, you less than men, you shadow men, you stranglers, stabbers, killers, and cowards, you murderous men without love, you men with no name, you imposters, you not men, you cannibals, you soul eaters, you human in form only, you skin-walking vulture, you Wendigo. I say your name, I say your sin, I say your crime, I say your evil, and I say they come. They're coming. These women in my dreams, they're coming. These ghost women, they're calling the silent she. The call is loud. It's a silent scream. It's the voice of dead women, these women in my dreams. That call has reached me as I sleep and awoken me. The women call out for anyone to hear. They call, but no one hears. No one hears. No one hears. They call out for justice. They call out to be remembered. They're calling for warriors to protect them, for warriors to grab lance and bow and raise arrows made of lightning. They call for warriors to raise the stick of thunder and the book of law. They call out to save the poor, the sad, the sick, the hungry, the alone. They call out for the children buried in so many graves like cordwood. They lay there making paths, red paths in the brown soil. Their blood is the earth you walk upon. You walk upon the people's flesh, dance upon their graves. You chew their bones. Now you know, now you know, now you know. Come, warriors, let us counsel. Let us do what warriors do. Bring the shield, protect the people, surround the children, the woman, the girl, the life bearers. Surround the nation with your power. Stand up, warriors. Be true men. Stand with these ghost women. Stand with them and give away your vision. Send them your eyes. Send them your strength, your muscles, your mind. Give them your heart. Give them your blood, your voice. Stand up, stand up, stand up. The name of the lost, the murdered, and the missing. Say it. The twisted hearts, they fear you. Stand up. The murderous men hide. Stand up. The ravagers, they're ready to run. Stand up, warriors, stand up. The children beg for help. Stand up, stand for action, not words without honor lost on the wind. Stand up, warriors. Prepare for battle. Raise the stick of thunder. Stand up, stand up, stand up with the people. Make your voice an eagle's cry. Ah! The spirits beg. They beg for truth, not white smoke and faceless mirrors. Truth, not hollow smiles. Truth, not trickster illusions that transform. Truth, not empty fog breath promises masking fear and death. Truth, not lies. They stand there. They stand there looking at the cruel, rough hands of the grim raper that snatched and snared. Let justice light the way as the ghost women walk. Let justice watch them tread the path of stars as 1,000 she's forget the darkness here. Bring the light, bring the light, bring the light of truth. Bring the light of truth, bring the light of shooting star women, of two-spirit women, of two-legged, two-eyed women, of dark-haired women. Come, come ye shades and shadows, 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 come, she spirits, come howling wolf woman, and come strong eagle, come, welcome otter woman, beaver and raccoon, welcome lightfoot deer, welcome black-winged crow, and welcome sweet robin, welcome big-eyed owl, welcome swimming fish girl, welcome good turtle and funny coyote, welcome skunk and snake and spider, welcome blue jay, welcome otter, welcome bear, welcome moose and fox and hawk, welcome wolverine woman, welcome weasel woman, welcome all, welcome red-blooded women, welcome mother, daughter, aunt, welcome grandmother not to be, welcome star woman on the spirit road. Teach us all your song, your words, your dance. Give us all your medicine, good medicine, all my relations, good medicine, strong medicine, medicine of power, medicine of light, medicine of love, medicine of song, medicine of water, medicine of healing dreams, medicine of life, sister medicine, brother medicine, mother medicine, good medicine power. I hear your voices, your silence spoken. I hear you call. I see you standing tall. I tell your story. I tell it. I tell it all. Miigwech. That is enough.
I like Miigwech. Thank you for that powerful performance. It's empowering and disturbing, and to be able to think, we all need to be with those warriors.
Well, yeah, there's
rise up against this injustices that are happening.
Yes, there's also I feel sometimes there's a great failure of men to be true men and support the women who could be your mother,
Absolutely. There is a group of men against rape, and in this case we have a very specific community with I think in 2019 alone there was about 5,600 Native American women reported missing, women and girls, according to the FBI's National Crime Information Center. And the actual number is probably much higher, because local authorities sometimes mistakenly list the victims as Latino or white.
And I also think that the last really good data that was collected was like in 2019. So
exactly, right. And I know that I mentioned before the Urban Indian Health Institute said the lack of good data and the resulting lack of understanding about the violence perpetrated against urban American Indian and Alaska Native women and girls adds to the historical and ongoing trauma of the American Indian and Alaska Native people
Yes.
experienced for generations.
And as we've seen in the news in Canada and now here in the United States, they've been finding all the bodies of these dead children at all the residential schools. It just is sort of an echo of sort of an ongoing program of genocide, the legacy of which all Native American people are still feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it seems like it never ends, this, the attack on the culture.
When you think about just in our history between 1492 and 1600, 90%
Yes.
of the indigenous populations of Americas had died, and that's about 55 million people perished because of violence and never before seen.
Can you imagine if 90% of the population died right now? Well, that's exactly what happened to Native Americans because of the diseases and the death that the Europeans brought with them, everything from smallpox to diphtheria, you name it. And it just devastated Native American country. And Christopher Columbus himself enslaved Native American women and brought them back to Europe with him.
Mm-hmm.
So this sort of ongoing pogrom against Native American women has been going on.
I think it generally, not just genocide, it's actually human trafficking we're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Well, a lot of the missing are victims of human trafficking. A lot of the murders too.
Sure.
I mean, think about this. It took 8 days to find Gabby Petito. You remember that was all over the news? It took 8 days to find 22-year-old Gabby Petito, missing white woman from Florida. And there was a woman in the Menominee tribe, 18 years old, and when she disappeared, it took 6 months to locate her. It was 9 months for yet another woman, Caitlin Kelly, and that is just a couple of stories. It barely scratches the surface. So many are missing, 3,000 in 2019, missing and murdered, and a lot of them, you know, a lot of this occurs along industrial sites like the pipelines, you know, where wildcatters come in and they have a very misogynist view of very vulnerable Native women. And it's terribly sad. And I would like for all of these horrible people to have a counting, you know, to be brought to light. But if nothing else, you know, at least here with this program, we're bringing a little bit of awareness about the issue.
And a couple of things happened where this week, President Biden signed an executive order directing the federal government to address the epidemic of missing or murdered Indigenous people, including coordinating investigations into unsolved cases. And it coincided with the White House Tribal Nations Summit held virtually last Monday among more than 570 tribes to celebrate progress of Native Americans. And with the good news that Kamala Harris made a speech and declared Indigenous Peoples Day. Mm-hmm. So rather than for years we've been calling October the second Monday Columbus Day, forgetting what the real history was. And we're no longer going to forget that. We're going to remember that history and the whole story and what happened to the Native American people.
Yeah. Yes, it's a tragic story, but guess what? We're still here. We're still politicians and doctors and lawyers, and we're chefs. Native American culture is still here. It's still survived, mm-hmm. in spite of all the hardships, and that goes to another great Native American tradition, which is the one of creativity. Creativity is a Native American trait and a cultural heartbeat, if you will.
When you were with us last year, you told us creative tales of wonder and entertaining lessons that the first Americans, gave as a legacy to future generations. Walker Between Worlds, your show that with wonderful characters like the trickster coyote and the magical dreamcatcher, web weaving grandmother spider.
Yes, I love those stories, those traditional stories. They carry actually the knowledge of the ancient people. Native Americans 9,000 years ago. We were here, and you can. A friend of mine just sent me all these petroglyphs, for example, that are 9,000 years old down in Winslow, Arizona, and
really?
and they're vibrant, and you can see the life and the story of the people in these petroglyphs and these markings. They're magical and amazing.
And we need that very brilliant American tradition, practices, learning the strides and the frictions, everything.
And one way to honor Native Americans would be to wear red. It's a symbol. It's in honor of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, as you see in this photograph I have behind me.
Yes, it's very stark.
Jamie Black, who is a Métis tribal member and an artist in Canada, created these installations with communities around the country and all over Canada, and asked for donations from the community of red dresses. And they would suspend them in trees in different places, on campuses, near state capitals, etc., just to bring awareness and attention. Because when you see this empty red dress, you realize that this once belonged to someone. This once was someone. And I think it is one of the most beautiful art installations I've come across that deal with this issue. And I just wanted to mention her name and what this photograph behind me was all about.
Thank you. I'm so glad you did. It's a beautiful photograph, and it's very moving. And it's good to hear that.
The official symbol for the campaign for the missing and murdered Indigenous women is a red hand across the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case you feel so moved. Anyway.
I think it's a symbol we should show, and we teach people. People need to learn about these things, and also sometimes people want to know, what can they do? But it all starts with information and learning.
And a lot of the information has been diverted. And when people talk about critical history, and there are a lot of people who oppose critical history, it's going to change history. Well, it's not going to change history. It's just going to tell the truth. It's just going to tell the truth. And for example, in all the history books that I read when I was in junior high and high school, not one mention was ever made of the Great Dying, for example, where 90% of the American Indian population was decimated.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Plymouth Plantation in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims landed, which was their village, was actually a Native American village called Patuxet, and it was considered to be a graveyard and sacred because all the natives who lived in Patuxet had died. And so when the Pilgrims arrived, they saw these buildings and they said, well, let's move in.
Oh no, they moved into the mausoleums, as it were.
Essentially,
yes. Oh my goodness. Wow. Leland, let's talk about your background for a moment, because you live in Maine, which is where Abenaki Nation is, the Dawn people, is it?
Yes, the Abenaki live here, the Micmac, the Maliseet, the Passamaquoddy. A lot of tribes are here. I worked for a year with the Micmac tribe in northern Maine, and the poverty for many of them was pretty extreme. They are a tribe of both artisans and musicians, and I was able to work with them the first year that they got their recognition as a tribe from the federal government, and it was such a big deal. It was such such, what can I say? It was such an uplifting stamp of approval for them as a community. They have been rediscovering their cultural legacies. They now have a small museum. They are really part of a much bigger nation, but the border of Canada separates them.
Mhm.
You see, maybe there's like 3,000 of them in Maine, but you cross the border into Canada and suddenly there's 20,000, you know, it's like,
Really?
it's incredible.
And sometimes there's problems at the border when
Oh my
certain
goodness,
certain
yes.
ceremonial items are
If you
taken
have an
away.
eagle feather, the federal government takes it from you because, you know, you can't have an eagle feather, but it,
Mhm,
you know, unless it's a ceremonial, which it is, but they still get hassled.
mhm, mhm.
Um,
Now,
and
your mother was from the Bad River Band of Chippewa Indian
yes,
from
yes, she was.
Wisconsin, and your
Yes,
father, a Shoshone Bannock
my father's a
from Idaho,
Shoshone Bannock from Fort Hall, Idaho.
and they
Yeah,
met at the
they
Bureau.
met at the
Tell us how they
Bureau.
met.
They met at the BIA, at the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Maybe one of the first government-sanctioned dating services. Um, and our family joke was, my mother's name was Beatrice, my father's name was Boyd, and our family joke was that the kids are all here because of the Boyds and the Bees. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
my family was sort of like a Native American version of the Swiss Family Robinson. My father, after working for the BIA, took a job in foreign service, and he was actually the first tribal member to get his college degree. And later in life, he became a professor. But for 30 years, he worked for the federal government. He worked in foreign service through USAID, the Agency for International Development.
So you were born in Afghanistan.
And yes, and so when he was stationed in Afghanistan, that's where I happened to be born, of Native American parents. And I think I might be the only Native American who was born in Afghanistan.
Possibly.
And then we moved from there. We lived in Iran, and we lived in Africa, in Tanzania, East Africa, for 7 years. And so I really have a global perspective. In fact, you know, my sisters and I, we often comment that the Maasai in Tanzania, where we live, the indigenous people there, their beadwork is just like Native American beadwork. It looks so similar. And they have so many of the same sort of, I don't know, attitudes towards people and community as Native Americans do. I'll never forget my time growing up in Africa, and that also shaped me. You know, every 2 years we'd come back to the United States, and at that time it was like the U.S. was this golden magical place, you know, and we would come back to the States, and indeed it kind of felt that way, especially when we'd go to Idaho and we'd see the powwow, for example, and all the tribes would come together, each tribe trying to be more fierce and be a better grass dancer than the last. And those memories, they were so important to me as a kid growing up. When I found out I was a Native American, I jumped and ran around the house. And
what do you mean you found out? I mean,
because
when did you find out?
I didn't know. I didn't know
Until you came back to the States, or?
No, actually, I found out when I was a little boy in Africa. I'm trying to remember exactly that day. Yeah, let me catch a little dream here. On that day, my mom said, "I want to tell you something. You know, you're an American Indian." I am? I am? And finding out that I was an American Indian, it gave me a sense of who I was. I was like, I started just running around and jumping and I said, "Well, do I have an Indian name?" And she goes, Wabuzuns. And Wabuzuns means little rabbit. So actually, I'm Leland Little Rabbit, and I think that she called me Little Rabbit because I hopped around so much, you know, or
But
maybe
it
because you know the
also,
family traveled so much and jumped around. But,
and it gives you a sense of identity, concept of
of
identity.
course, and identity is so important.
Mhm.
And you know, not having a sense of identity with a culture that's been so heavily abused, I understand and I feel for young people especially, and their struggle with knowing who they are. You know, a lot of Native American kids, they don't know any traditions. They don't know how to dance. They've never done a sweat lodge. You know, and it takes effort sometimes to gather them back into the fold. And it's an issue, you know, not just with Native American youth, but with youth in general. I've worked with a lot of incarcerated young people, and identity really is sort of the crux. And being able to work with them as an artist, as a theater artist, going into these prison systems, having the kids come in their orange, you know, and actually having them do some sort of creative art that revealed who they were, made them just a little bit vulnerable, I could see sort of a magical transformation. And perhaps it only lasted as long as my workshop did, but I have it felt like I was doing something that had depth and that could possibly change somebody's trajectory, their path.
And
There's
just,
go ahead.
Just learning some of the signs you learned when you first opened the show earlier, you greeted us. Tell us about the greeting.
Sure, sure. Well, all the tribes have their own language, and in order to communicate with the other tribes, there was created what they call a hand talk. In other words, a sign language with the hands. And it's very illustrative. For example, buffalo going over a cliff might be like this, right? Or if you steal, it might be like this. Right?
Yeah.
If you really want to give a greeting that's, I think, one of the most beautiful and most positive greetings, with hand talk, it's sort of like this. You use your thumb and indicate yourself like this. You go, and then you sort of cast out your eyes to the person that you're greeting. So it goes like this. You go, and then you show your heart, and you show a sunrise. So it says, "I see you, and in my heart, a sunrise."
And just that tradition, it's so beautiful, it's physical, and it just says so much to the person that is just very respectful and beautiful. And it's part of a wonderful culture.
There's so many signs and so much language. It's so beautiful. And there's some really wonderful artists out there. Like I'm a huge fan of the Native American hip hop artist Supaman, Supaman. You've got to check him out. His dancing is maybe some of the most incredible dancing I've ever seen. He combines hip hop with traditional Native American grass dance. It's just astounding.
Oh, I'll definitely look him up.
You've got to see it if you haven't. And some other things that are on the horizon that are very exciting. I'm a huge fan also of Reservation Dogs. It's got an all Native American cast and crew that are, you know, committed to the Native American issue. It's about kids growing up on a reservation, and it's one of the most honest and sort of funny and revealing about Native American humor pieces of media that's come along in a long time.
That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that, and I will definitely look for that as well. Leland, we only have a few minutes. Our time goes so quickly, and I know you had one other piece that you'd like to perform.
That's right. I'd like to share one little piece to lighten everybody's heart. In Native American culture, the feather is sort of a sign of honor. And so I'd like to do this little piece, Feathers. all be dream catchers for each other. Let only the good dreams through. Thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you so much, Leland. That was just lovely. What a beautiful way to end the evening. And I also want to helps me remind our audience to please support us. Take a moment to click on that tip jar, and your tax-deductible support is indeed needed and much appreciated to keep the MarshStream platform open to our communities. Any comments anyone has or questions, please go ahead if you have anything to say. But we are coming to our close now. And I just want to say a very special thank you to you, Leland Faulkner, for tonight's featured presentation of Dreamcatcher.
So very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Look for more at lelandfaulkner.com, and also look for Solo Arts Heal shows and more at themarsh.org and on our MarshStream YouTube platform. And next week, ANCAN founder Rick Davis features singer, songwriter, and visual artist and mental health advocate Nere Na, who will share songs and an animated video from her latest album, Everything Stands Back Up. Compelling stories about health and healing from amazing people. Please join us. Thanks again, Leland Faulkner, MarshStream producers, Brianna Caver and Kristen Scheel, and always to artistic director Stephanie Wiseman and our Zoom and YouTube audiences. Thank you for being here. Look for Solar Arts Heel shows on the MarshStream at themarsh.org.